Global from Asia, episode 260. We're going to take an adventure from San Francisco to Bali, something like that.
Welcome to the Global from Asia podcast, where the daunting process of running an international business is broken down into straight-up, actionable advice. And now, your host, Michael Michelini.
Thank you, everybody, for choosing to download this. I was talking to some people, and some unsubscribed, now they're resubscribing. Different reasons, or, we did take that break for a few months. So I'm excited to hear that you're hearing, or excited to virtually feel you're listening to this. I was talking to a friend, I think Zach Franklin, says, how do you just talk to yourself on these microphones, or do an interview with him on a bus and thinking about people listening? I mean, I guess it's like target avatar. I know I've met some listeners, that said they listen to it and they're walking their dog in the morning, driving the car, riding a bike. I think most of the time we're on the move. And this week's show is on the move. Our old-time listener, Tommy Griffith, ClickMinded, get him on the show. He was listening to this when he was in San Francisco, working for the man. He seemed like he had a pretty cool gig. And we talk about it's a fun, kind of case study discussion about moving full-time entrepreneurship when you actually enjoy what you do in your day job, and moving your lifestyle and the adjustments and some of the ups and downs and the roller coaster. It was a really fun conversation, and we had quite a fun time. And hopefully this motivates some of you to maybe get out of your comfort zone. I think that's one of the bigger takeaways. We'll have the blah, blah, blah after the interview. Some of you say you enjoy that. I hope you guys do too. And, Gulf from Asia, we're mixing things up. We were talking about the protests last week. We talk about Amazon sometimes, of course, Asia business. And this one's maybe, leaving your comfortable San Francisco gig and moving to Bali. We actually talked about Tommy on a really old show with Bree Moreau about SEO and Bali, and it was that same co-working space. So we're kind of connecting the dots here. Well, 260 shows is quite a bit if you add in E-commerce Gladiator, and I've also been a co-host at the China Business Cast, and I did Forbes China for a while, and some other shows, Social Agent. I mean, over 300 or something shows for sure, count it all. But even on this feed, it's definitely more than 260. So, of course, we're going to have some connecting of dots of previous guests. So if you remember the Bree Moreau show about him building an SEO company in Bali, we have Tommy G here, Tommy Griffith, also connecting that dot when he got there to do his SEO training course, building and growth. So thank you again for listening, and let's get into the show. And if you want to hear maybe my first time, some of my, maybe people always like the juicy stuff. We'll talk about some of my hardships of living overseas after the show. I'll try to not repeat myself. Maybe I said it somewhere in some of these shows, but I'll put some of these kind of more tragic things that have happened to me. How about this? I'll talk about my bike getting robbed twice in China and my laptop getting stolen in China. I'll put that in a blah, blah, blah. But let's take it away, get into the interview with Tommy Griffith, ClickMinded, and his journey from starting his online training business. Whew, get me all choked up here. Tommy going full-time and growing his business, putting a co-founder in late, and other juicy story tidbits here. And it was a fun conversation, and I was also a listener. So let's dive in. Are you coming out to China this October for the trade show season? Want to meet up with amazing guests and experts in cross-border e-commerce, Amazon FBA, and more? Gulf from Asia's 4th annual CrossBorder Summit finally made its own website. For many years, it was a sub-page on gulffromasia.com. We're separating it out. Also got amazing co-organizer Mark Ramos helping out on the ground in Guangzhou. We've been hiring new people at the team to help out, amazing volunteers. www.crossbordersummit.com/China. Border, BORDER, B-O-A-R-D-E-R. Some say B-O-A-R-D-E-R. We got both, so you can misspell it if whichever spelling you like. CrossBorderSummit.com. Hope to see you there. It supports the show, and there's amazing people there. CrossBorderSummit.com. Bye-bye. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another Global from Asia podcast. We are in what category? 4-Hour Work Week, Escape the Rat Race episode, a story, and a friend and a longtime listener. It's Tommy Griffith from ClickMinded. Thanks for being here, Tommy.
Mr. Michelini, what's going on, my man?
That's good. It's good, man. We've catching up a little bit before the recording, but it's great to have you on the show. I remember you reaching out back in the day, listening to some of the earlier episodes here, and it's great to get you on the show.
Yeah, man. Now that you're big and famous, you got to remember the little guys that listened to you when you were small. Okay, so you gotta you gotta give me some credit. I was listening. I'm an OG, man. I was listening in the early days.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, we've diversified, but yeah, originally it was hyper focused in Hong Kong. All the Hong Kong business banking and stuff, which is fun, and we're expanding. But today's show is like I said earlier, I read your blog post. We'll definitely link it up in the show notes. The whole I think everybody likes those raw ones where you just kind of lay out your experiences, the ups and the downs of entrepreneurship and getting out of the grind. But you're the founder, CEO of ClickMinded. Is that what the best title for you now, or?
Yeah, that's it's being the CEO of like a four-person company. I mean, it's like
it always
definitely
makes you laugh.
Stretching it, right?
I love
exactly.
it. Like you go to these networking events and everybody's a CEO half the time, right. But it's but it's great, man. You've been doing good. So, ClickMinded is like a SEO training, online training company. Is that the correct way, or?
Yeah. So ClickMinded is a digital marketing training course for entrepreneurs and marketers. We started off as an SEO training course. I've been doing search engine optimization for about 10 years. I started with a very, like a lot of people, read 4-Hour Work Week, wrote a dorky ebook, tried to get it ranking in Google, taught myself SEO. First business failed. I ended up moving out I kind of came back. I was traveling and first business failed, and I came back to the U.S. with my tail between my legs, and had brought on a bunch of debt from family and friends that I'd taken on, and ended up finding a job at PayPal. So I moved over to the Bay Area and managed search engine optimization at PayPal for 2 years. Then eventually moved over to Airbnb and managed search engine optimization at Airbnb for 4 years, and started ClickMinded on the side while I was working at both of those. So it started as a physical in-person training course. I was teaching startups SEO on the weekends in co-working spaces, and it was just sort of right place, right time with this online learning, online course renaissance we're in now. It was 2012. I had a physical in-person class, and I ended up creating an online course for Udemy. You familiar with Udemy? You know them?
Yeah, I have. I don't actually know if I even want to say it on the show, but I have one of my courses on there. I still get a small drip of money once in a while, once a month or
nice.
something. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so started there, and that sort of kicked it off. I ended up using my search engine optimization training course at Airbnb. We would train up designers and engineers and data scientists that joined the growth team to work on SEO. We would take them through the course. It grew and grew and grew. It ended up eclipsing my salary after a few years. And then 2 years ago, I went full-time on it. So left Airbnb to go full-time on ClickMinded. Since then, I left to travel. I've been traveling for the last few years, and we've grown it from an SEO course to much more comprehensive. So it's 7 courses now: paid ads, content marketing, email marketing, social media, sales funnels, Google Analytics. And our model is we try and find world-class people that do this every day, right? So the social media course is taught by the former head of social at Airbnb. The content marketing course is taught by the former content strategist from Lyft. And we try and have instructors that kind of do this stuff every day.
Nice. Yeah, of course, quality is everything, especially people, it's more than just the money of the course. It's the time people need to invest and, to enjoy and take action and learn from it. So I there's so much. I've read your blog and, I've seen you speak about this and we've talked a lot, and I always like your jokes about your first customer. You have like pictures of his name. I think it's pretty funny. Or maybe your first online, or was it your first offline customer for your course? Like, I think it was offline, right? You were doing these like meetups, or like maybe first how you got into. So you're working at Airbnb, and you started ClickMinded, and then you. I remember this is a cool story. I don't know if I'm messing it up or going out of order here, but I like this.
Yeah. So I had, I moved to San Francisco after the first failed business attempt, and I was one of these people where I was incredibly blessed. My parents had paid for my university, but I ended up putting myself into debt after university. I tried this business, it didn't work. I borrowed money from family and friends, and so it ended up ultimately working out. I failed into a job. I taught myself SEO in the meantime and ended up managing search engine optimization at PayPal. But I still had all this debt I was trying to pay down, and so wanted to start this side project, and ended up physically teaching this SEO course on the weekends. And it was all day Saturday, 9 to 5, kind of all you can SEO. And I was charging $500 per user. I did a revenue share with the co-working space, so would share revenue with them because I didn't have the money to book a space and then be really stressed about filling it, right? So just did a revenue share whenever I booked. 4 to 5 person classes ended up being great, but 1 person classes were terrible. And the moment I knew I had to change something was I had this moment in time where I had someone, he emailed me and said, "Hey, I'd love to come in and do a course, but I'm only in town this one day and I can only do this Saturday. Can you do it?" And it was a Saturday. It was March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, which is also my birthday. And it was this guy. He was like a 50-something-year-old Chinese guy named Philip. And he just emailed me saying, "Can you make an exception and teach a course on the Saturday?" And I was sitting there reading his email, and I was just like so miserable. And I'm thinking about the debt I had, and I was like, okay, let's do it. And then he said, "Do you have a promo code?" And I was like, oh, God, okay, fine. And then, when I did out the math, it was awful. It was a 50-50 revenue share with the co-working space. I create printed materials for the guy. That cost some money. I would buy the guy lunch, right?
Yeah.
PayPal fees, Eventbrite fees. And then I spent 4 or 5 hours preparing for it, and then 5 or 6 hours teaching. And I did out the math, and I was making about $12 an hour, and San Francisco minimum wage was $13 an hour. So it was not. ClickMinded was the worst company to work for in San Francisco.
I mean, yeah, it's of course a funny story, but I still think listeners should realize you're hustling. I still think I would take that. It's your first customer, your experience. You're getting some. I think, of course, maybe the short term. And I remember your charts in your blog post. Of course, I think any startup or any tech business or business, you're not making max profit at the beginning, but you're validating your business. You're learning it's working. I mean, of course, you could have maybe said no to this guy and still maybe be where you are today. But at the same time, I think, would you? Maybe it's a good question for you. Would you do that again, or would you just? Do you think that helped you at all, saying yes to this dude and working on your birthday, or do you think is there any breakthrough of maybe maybe you should have just gone and partied on your birthday on St. Patrick's Day? I don't know. I wonder if there's any. There's a whole lean startup movement. I don't know if that's as big as it used to be, but just it's experimenting and learning, right? Is there any? Or is it just was that just a big mistake, you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can't run the simulation twice, right?
True.
So And so there, I think the biggest thing, and a lot of people undervalue this, is being miserable and in debt is one of the most powerful forces of nature there is. And you don't, it's just funny because that, you could argue that that was the catalyst that ultimately ended up being the reason why I pivoted to, one of the big reasons why I pivoted to creating an online course was because the business was so stupid. I loved what I did. I loved SEO. I loved teaching SEO, but the business was fundamentally dumb. And that the motivation to do that on that Saturday on my birthday only came about because I was miserable and in debt. And it's really funny because you might have a lot of people in your audience that are listening and they're comfortable and they have a good paying job, and maybe they're thinking about an Amazon FBA business, or maybe they're thinking about jumping to the next side project. But in a really strange and interesting and counterintuitive way, I think the more comfortable they are, the more dangerous it is. I think the less likely they're going to jump. Right, and it kind of the more you have to lose, the less likely you are to put it on the line, right? And I was just in this position where I felt a little bit cornered, a little bit trapped, and I had to make it work. And so I ended up accepting everything, taking everything, and I just said yes to a million things until it eventually worked.
Yeah, I like that. You made me think of my days on Wall Street, and I honestly hated working there, so that was my motivation, and I did it purely for making as much money as I could to start my own thing. But I remember a lot of people that I work with were, like you said, comfortable, and they would, there was of course the happy hours, and I was just starting on eBay and selling on my website and stuff like that, and they're like, wait, how do you do that, or what, and then they're always like, and then I quit, and I remember they're just like, I want to quit one day, but I don't know when, because they're making good salary. It gets to direct deposit to your bank account every 2 weeks. And it's true. I think, if you're comfortable, that might be a problem to start your own business. I think if you're backed into a corner where you got to make this work and you got to take this shitty offer from some dude asking for a discount code for a single course, single person. And, I think that just forces you to work your ass off until you make this work and do whatever it takes. I think that's some of the issues is some people, are just comfortable. And I agree with you. I think then that might be a negative. I think, or that horrible word like entitlement, or people think that I deserve this job or this, which is an issue. I think in the world today, a lot of people feel like they have to get, there's a certain level of living standards and things like that. But
yeah, it's interesting. And I agree with you, but I think the more comfortable you are and the further along you are, the less likely you are to jump, and the higher risk you are to sort of stay the status quo, right? So yeah. I think in a weird way, being super miserable was the driving force that took me to the next level.
Another thing is there was a WeChat group. I try to not get too distracted with these groups. But there was some fight in a group, and some guy's like, "Dude, Google my name. You don't know who I am," or and some guy said he linked to a movie with Brad Pitt that says that is why no one will remember your name, because there's some kid that passes him the sword. And he says, "Are you really going to fight that huge army or that huge enemy on your own? I'm so scared. Aren't you scared?" And he says, "That is why no one will remember your name." Like, you just got to go out there and just put yourself out there, right? I think that's what I think one of these stories of people just because I get that same question, like, why did you quit, or how did you? But you were doing good, and I remember we had met in person, and we often meet at DC BKK, and amazing guys there, and you were still working, I think, when I met you there, and this was still your side hustle, right? And so now you were in a pretty good position. You were able to work you get your decent, income as an employee and also have a pretty awesome side hustle that was profitable and doing really well, right? I mean, but you were still wanted to travel the world, get out of, is that the story? I mean, maybe we'll just fast forward a little bit, but of course you hustled, you learned, you built an online course, you grew it, but you were still able to, I think they even were supporting you, right? I mean, they knew, it's not like it was a secret. And what was the motivator to do that?
Yeah, so the business ended up eclipsing my salary in the third year I was working on it, but I didn't end up leaving until the fifth year. And part of the big reason why was this might be a little different than a lot of the audience, but I just really liked my job, right? I also just kind of wasn't done in my job, right? It was a lot of personal stuff. I joined an amazing company. I fully drank the Kool-Aid on Airbnb, but it really was incredible. PayPal was extremely boring, much more like a bank. Customers really don't like it. A lot of people have a lot of hate towards PayPal.
I really hate those guys, man. Seriously, I think listeners.
For sure.
I rank in Google for tons of variations of PayPal. I get painful people that think I'm somehow PayPal and they want to kill me just because I have a blog about them. Like, it's seriously like.
Yeah, there's not a lot of goodwill out there for PayPal, but there's a lot of goodwill for Airbnb. And I joined at just a crazy time. Like, the business was really skyrocketing when I joined. There was 100-something employees when I joined, and 2,000-something when I left. The business doubled every year for 4 years in a row. The first year, the week I joined, we were subpoenaed by the state of New York for our data. And the last week I left, I worked on a Super Bowl ad, and like Beyonce stayed in an Airbnb, right? So it's just like a massive, the CEO said this all the time, and it's the rah-rah stuff, it's the propaganda, but I really believe it. He said he thinks it's a once in a generation company, and I really do believe it. I think it's fundamentally changed how we travel. It's just going to be one of these things that created a new category. Our grandkids are going to use it, right? It's not going to go away. It's not like a dumb app. It's an actual thing. And so I got to be a part of it, right? And so it wasn't this calculation like, oh, I'm working my mindless job I hate and I want to get out as soon as possible. It was, I'm working on this business. It's great, but I actually want to accomplish a lot at this company, and these are the smartest people I've ever worked with. And, I just sort of wasn't done. I was dating someone. There was just all kinds of stuff. So I just sort of wasn't done and kept working on the business and sort of kept working on my job as well. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I can say it was different for me. I already kind of hinted towards that, but I worked, I worked at Deutsche Bank of Germany, and Wall Street, and distressed debt. And I mean, honestly, I'll be honest though, there was some fun times. I mean, I was on an internal trading floor. I wasn't on the actual trading floor, but I was in the bank's trading floor, and we had pizza. We would get we'd drink together almost every night or nights, and there was coffee switching to soda, crazy stuff going on. Like, I drank a bottle of Tabasco sauce on the floor as a dare. It's crazy stuff, but I was more wanted to build something. I think financial companies don't really build much, but
I would love to see Mike Michelini pounding Tabasco sauce. That's on my list. I don't recommend.
I don't think that's you were talking about Airbnb once in a lifetime. I think that was a once in a lifetime. I don't recommend. I don't recommend that. It's not good for your internal system.
Maybe at the next DCBKK we can get you a bottle. Right?
Oh, brother. It wasn't the biggest bottle, but it was not the small ones you see in it was like a medium-sized Tabasco one, man. That was pretty nuts. So, we have your blog posts I'm using as a guide. Actually, another book I'll recommend is The Upstarts. I read this. I don't know if you've read that. I mean, you lived it. You were in Airbnb, but it's a good book about how Uber and Airbnb and the killer companies of New Silicon Valley are changing the world. That's their subtitle. But I remember reading about the subpoena in New York, and it's a good book if somebody's interested to read. It's a good story of these sharing economy businesses as well. But
That's cool. Yeah, I've seen that book. I actually haven't read it.
Yeah,
But
by
a
Brad
bunch of my
Stone.
coworkers and friends are all in it. So
Oh,
yeah, it's
cool.
kind of cool.
So let's move forward, and you're listening to the Global From Asia show. You're listening to TMBA, Empire Flippers, and some others, and you're trying to make some moves. You're just reaching out, which is great. So Asia was on the list, or is that part of the goal? Was that a factor in leaving, or is the adventure, the travel? I mean, what was it that finally you eclipsed your salary? You know, was that what jumped on a plane? I'm looking forward to this story. I want to joke about the Bali co-working space webinar. I definitely want to have this in the show, but I think we'll get to that later. But I think there's the attraction of the Nomad, the 4-hour work week. Is that part of the reason that you made the jump, or is...
Yeah. So I think I really started to. My big problem was I loved my job and I sort of felt unaccomplished at work and wanted to finish a bunch of things there. But I was really sick of San Francisco. I mean, really over it. San Francisco is such a terrible place to build a lifestyle business. It really just makes no sense if you're working on a lifestyle business. You go there for funding and then you get out. You really... I have all kinds of opinions on this I can save for another day, but I did myself a huge disservice by, I was getting really excited to leave, and I kind of gave myself too long to plan my escape. And I spent a lot of Saturdays, like you said, I was listening to Tropical MBA, Empire Flippers, your podcast, Global From Asia. I was emailing you questions about, whether or not I should set up a company in Hong Kong and all this kind of stuff. And it was cool to hear your episodes from the early days. But yeah, you were in my ears when I was planning my escape, man.
Nice.
But yeah, so I think I did myself a real big disservice when I was getting ready to bail, because I sort of set my expectations crazy high. And I had just envisioned this life that was so absurdly unattainable. You know what I mean? You see too many people on Instagram with their laptop out and they're coconut out on a beach in Bali, and it'll drive you nuts. You know what I mean?
I could imagine.
Yeah, and so I was planning the big escape. I finally, put in my notice, wound it all down. I did my 4 years at Airbnb, said bye to everyone, sold or donated all my stuff, got rid of everything, got rid of the apartment, and just everything I owned was in a backpack. And, I left. I went home and hugged the family and all that, but I left, one-way ticket, filmed this new version of the course. The basic plan was expand the course from an SEO course to 7 new courses. Went in with a friend, filmed everything, and finally arrived in Bali. And the minute I got there, it was a disaster. Like my first day there, I got robbed by the police. I got food poisoning, and I was throwing up everywhere. The course we'd filmed I'd spent $15,000 on filming this new version of the course, and it was raining really hard in the warehouse we had rented all day, and so the audio was super messed up. And so I'm sitting there in Bali, not even a week in. I had just been robbed by the police. I'm throwing up everywhere, and I'm clutching this external hard drive with $15,000 worth of footage on it, and I'm just looking up at the sky, and I'm thinking back to Airbnb is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's all included. It's like the classic Silicon Valley, kind of all-inclusive resort. It's like the MacBooks and the beanbag chairs and, the smartest people you've ever worked with and Airbnb credit. And I'm sitting there what am I doing? Why did I leave? And just very seriously debating what I was doing with my life. You know what I mean?
I can kind of imagine. I mean, I came out here a bit earlier, and I didn't get that whole FOMO feeling from Instagram and social media when I first came. But yeah, I think that they always overhype, and half those people are selling some kind of a life-changing course or some kind of MLM scheme or something. I think a lot of times on those social media pictures, but yeah, I mean, the internet. I mean, the internet in Asia is most places, unless you're in like Hong Kong or Singapore. I mean, maybe in some places, I guess getting better. But even back when you would come out here, the internet was always a big issue, especially, and we're working online. And I think you cracked me up. I think it's Bree. He was even on the show a while ago, and we were joking about you with saying you were an ISIS like webinar at that co-working space in Bali. You were doing like a live webinar, and you have like a screenshot, and you're showing like you like with a not well lit, and it's like black background, and you're like, I was doing this webinar from this co-working space with like bad internet, and I feel like I'm a ISIS captured, just doing a live streaming for something like this. So it was cracking up, man. But
yeah, it was one of the many problems. I ended up, finally getting my everything together, and we decided to launch the course and prepared for this big webinar, and it just went terribly. I'd emailed the whole list for this whole webinar, and I was doing it from the co-working space in Bali at like 2 a.m. The air conditioner in the booth went out. I was just sweating super hard. The connection was really bad, and the audio was really bad. And someone literally emailed in and said, "Were you captured by ISIS?" Question mark. And that's just a small summary of basically how the first 3 months of leaving my job to go full time on this thing was.
Yeah. So I think I guess to recap for listeners, I mean, I think every year or even more, it gets, I don't want to say easier, or it gets easier and better. I mean, Airbnb has helped tons for people to be able to travel anywhere, and even Uber. Well, Uber has more sisters in Asia with Grabs or DDs, but I think these services and technology and infrastructures have been steadily increasing, I think. So I think it's getting quote unquote easier and better for people to travel the world, and with co-working spaces getting better and everything's getting, I think, better and easier. But of course, that's something people should take into account. I think for me, I've definitely had to meditate. There's been days like you or I still have where I'm in Chiang Mai, and I'm a little bit further out from downtown, and the power blew out like last Friday. Like, we're in 2019, and then the whole complex, and they're like, oh, you go to the security guard, and they're like, yeah, we'll be back in 4 o'clock. I'm like, it's 10 a.m. Like, it's 10 a.m. Like, so I think it's something people should realize there's gonna be times you just gotta. And then my wife. I still get annoyed, honestly, and she's like, "You're not in America anymore." And I'm like, "I know, I haven't been in America in like 11 years. I know, but that's definitely something I think people should prepare for. But I think it's also part of the adventure. Of course, if it really interferes with your ability to get work done, is something people consider. So 3 months in a webinar where you're looking like ISIS hostage. What happens? What happens next?
Yeah, so the next phase of it, that's sort of where we took all that money and reinvested in launching the next phase of the business. I ended up bringing on a co-founder, actually really late into the business, which is sort of controversial. But yeah, brought him on. He was a former apprentice, and we took all that money and plowed it back into launching all the other courses. And it was very up and down again from there. We pre-sold these 7 courses before we launched them and ended up doing really, really, really well. And then the next kind of 6 months after that were absolutely miserable. The pre-sale went really great. Then we had a ton of problems in actually getting the products up and live and going. We ultimately recovered from that. We ended up recovering from it in the most boring way possible. We just sort of laid out all the projects and what we thought the biggest impact would be, and we worked on them slowly over time, just kind of chipping away at each one of them. And we're in a much better spot now. We're excited to see what happens next. Digital marketing training is just kind of one of these things we don't think is going to go away anytime soon. Businesses are continuing to invest in it. We have a bunch of bigger name clients now, which is cool, and we're trying to figure out what's next. Is it going to be, the big corporations that want to train up 1,000 people, or is it going to be more smaller companies? Right now, we focus mostly on entrepreneurs, marketers, and agencies and consultants. And so do we do more of that, right? Do we go the university angle? Right now there's 50 universities in the United States that offer a master's degree in digital marketing. Okay. And these degrees are completely pointless. They are completely overpriced, absolutely ridiculous. They cost $40,000 to $100,000. And they're absurd. They offer no value to the users. They're taught with physical textbooks by 70-year-old instructors. They often don't do job placements, right? And as a hiring manager, I've hired people at PayPal and Airbnb. People have hired me at these jobs, and no one would ever look at these degrees with any seriousness, right? But young kids are being convinced that they need them, and so. The next phase of it, we'll see. We could take it a lot of different angles, but it's definitely turned from kind of the dorky, broken business where I was sitting in Bali crying, clutching my external hard drive, to something where we're solving serious businesses' problems now, and it's starting to grow, which has been great.
Yeah, I think it's exciting times, and we should also target Chinese, man. Chinese are like the biggest buyers of. I think that's the big problem with this trade war is they're stopping making me. Chinese parents will just pay anything for school, like the top school, because of degree, and you want to have this stupid degree on your stupid resume to get a stupid job. Like, my wife is already talking about like which Harvard or Yale for our kids. I'm like, man, they're like 3 and 5 years old. Like, I think. Especially Chinese want this face and this stupid degree. I don't know. I don't know if my kids will ever listen to these podcasts, but I hope they don't go to college, to be honest. Especially in 15, 20 years. I just can't imagine. I can't imagine it being a requirement. I heard is it Google and some other Facebook, I think they're not requiring degrees anymore for working there, stuff like this.
There's starting to be a movement, and I was actually at Airbnb. I'm just passionate about the subject. I formerly taught at a graduate school. I'm attacking this market now, but I was also just passionate about it, and I would talk to recruiters about this all the time. And it often didn't matter whether or not it was formal policy. The recruiter has a job to hire a particular person, but it never came up. Having the degree, and this is very contextually dependent, right? You probably need a degree for brain surgery and pediatric care, right, or rocket science. But there's just so many useless ones out there that need to go away.
Exactly.
That's interesting that you gun to your head. If asked today, you actually wouldn't want your kids to go to college. I find that fascinating. Why is that?
Well, my kids are really, really young. So, my son's 5, he's in kindergarten, K2, and he wanted to draw Hulk. So I don't know how to draw Hulk, man. And he's like, I don't know how to draw Hulk. And I'm like, okay, YouTube, how to draw a Hulk cartoon. And there's this 4-minute video with a father or an adult and a child, and they're sitting next to each other, and they all, they're showing you for free in a 4-minute video, and he drew it. And my wife's like, he's not going to learn because he's gonna just learn to search YouTube to get answers. I'm like, I don't believe that, man. I think he'll get confidence and he'll be able to draw a better Hulk by himself without the video in 2 years. And now he wants me to show him how to draw Spider-Man. And I got annoyed on WeChat. I kind of get annoyed at direct messages because I try to answer as much as I possibly can on my blog for free or a podcast for free. And people still want to directly ask me a question. I'm a little bit of a nut, but someone's asking me a question about coming to Thailand, and they're asking me questions that I believe you can find in Google and the top 5 search results in 10 minutes. Maybe it's blocked in China. Maybe people just search and ask their friends for answers. But I said to my son, I'm like, Miles, please don't be this girl on my WeChat and asking someone for answers. You can search on the internet for almost any answer now and learn by yourself. And he's 5, so he's like, my dad, what do you mean? I'm like, just promise me, Miles, before you ask someone a question, you will at least spend 5 minutes to try to get the answer, and most likely you'll be able to get that answer in 5 minutes. And I think that I'm training him, so he's waiting for me to show him the next cartoon drawing tutorial of how to make Spider-Man. But I think that will I think that that's the skill, right? To be able to learn how to learn, right? And then, of course, they'll need courses like your courses for a very extensive, in-depth training. But to get answers on some shorter things, like don't be lazy and try to like wait for somebody to tell you how to do something like in school. Like I think that the future is people can learn. I mean, look at all this amazing knowledge that's just at our fingertips. So I at least hope my kids, I'm going to try my best to force them, but encourage them to learn by themselves, not wait for their teacher to give them an assignment so they learn how to do this, but actually take initiative and learn. And I think that will be the future. We have, I have our team that's going to make this show. It's an amazing team, mostly in the Philippines, and I try to encourage everyone to. If you want to work hard, you can learn. There's no excuses anymore where you can't maybe you can't get the degree from that expensive college because you can't pay the $40,000 to $100,000 or whatever. But if you want to learn something now, I think there's very little things blocking you from doing that and accomplishing that. And I hope I have some, whether it's my kids or listeners or people on my team, I hope that I, can have some difference for that. That's my rant.
Completely, 100%. Yeah, actually, at the university I was teaching at before anyone. I did it for 4 years in a row, 4 summers in a row, and the first summer was miserable because I set it up very poorly. And anytime anyone had a question, they would email me, and I would just answer it. And then 90% of all the questions I got, just like you, were very Googleable.
Exactly.
So the second year, the very first day, I set up. Are you familiar with the site letmegooglethatforyou.com?
There's some other variations where you can hyperlink it, and then you give them the link, and they click it, and it spits out a search result page like this.
Exactly. Yeah. So the basic idea, it's a jerk move, but basically you go to letmegooglethatforyou.com, and then you Google the thing, and then it gives you a link where it gives it to the user, and it just goes to Google for them and Googles it. And it's just a kind of a jerk way to tell people to stop being lazy.
Yeah, I mean,
but I actually did this with all my students. So I just had so many Googleable questions, and I said at the very first day, you can ask me anything you want, but if you ask me a very Googleable question, all I'm going to do is send you to letmegooglethatforyou.com, and it's going to be really embarrassing. And that dropped the emails to me by half.
Yeah.
Which was great because people, they did it on their own. They searched for themselves and all that. So it ended up being really valuable. But we view I view it exactly like you, Mike. Like the model we take is similar to you. You're always pushing out all this free content. We're the exact same way. We're actually very inspired by Ramit Sethi.
I'll teach you to be rich.
I will teach you to be rich. Yeah. So we do the same thing. Like 98% of everything we do is free. But if you want the results faster and you want the unlimited lifetime updates and all that, then you go for the paid course. Or if you're trying to train up a whole team, right, you go for the paid course. But 98% of what we do is free, and you can access it and search for it. And that's just sort of how it works. So it's been really helpful for us so far.
Sure. Of course. I mean, I'm of course encouraging courses and programs. It's just like this bloat in these universities of, like you said, 40 to 100,000. And then I keep reading these articles like, the student loan debt. And then you come out of college, you can't even get a job because you learned how to you learned something that's not even really relevant or useful in society today. And then, and then there's the entitlement, and then it might even lead back to this whole, Donald Trump walls and immigrations, but it's not even happening in the U.S. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in everywhere now. These countries are, it's protectionism because we have to give our people the jobs because they paid for the school or they were born here or they have a passport from here. It's just kind of really annoying to me, and I don't know how much longer governments can protect its people from the reality that just because you were born here and had have this college degree that you should get more opportunity than other people. I don't know how much longer that's going to be, and I think if that ever does go away, there's a lot of hungry, hardworking, quote unquote third world people that are pretty amazing that will hustle. So I think that people got to realize that.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes.
But this has been great, Tommy. I think we've hopefully motivated some comfortable people to maybe get uncomfortable, or maybe don't purposely go into debts to start their own business. But what do you normally recommend somebody that wants to do what you've done, or what many people listening might want to do is get out of the rat race, live the dream, sipping coconuts in a ISIS compound in Bali, or
Yeah, so I think the big thing that I actually kind of accidentally stumbled upon this, but Dan Andrews, the guy from that
TMBA,
Dynamite Circle, TMBA, our mutual friend, he coined this term in a blog post recently that I really liked, and he called it exit velocity. And this ended up being incredibly helpful for me. And the point him and his co-host on the podcast, Ian, talk about is they say there's kind of too many people, maybe they're a lawyer during the day and they end up doing a side project that's completely unrelated to what they've spent, 20 years working on in their other life, right? So like they've been a lawyer for 20 years, but then they go and they start to sell CrossFit jump ropes on the side or something like that, right? And it doesn't mean you can't do it. It doesn't mean it won't work. Of course, there's examples of people doing something completely unrelated, and that's fine. There's also examples where maybe they don't like their current job and they want to go do something they're really passionate about, and that's totally unrelated. That's fine too. But I think something that increases your likelihood of success is this concept that Dan coined called exit velocity. And I had accidentally done this. I have the definition right here. I'm just pulling it up now. He calls exit velocity the amount of professional and entrepreneurial momentum you have when quitting your job and starting a new venture. Momentum can come from a variety of sources: investment, capital, experience, anchor clients, industry knowledge, and connections, aka unfair advantage. Right. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm working for these two big brand companies, PayPal and Airbnb. I'm managing search engine optimization there. But on the side, I was teaching SEO and sort of, was getting paid by someone else to do this stuff, but was also compounding all of that into my side project. And then by the time I was ready to go, I had a lot of momentum on the ground, right? I leveraged everything I had there. And so I think that's helpful. That'd be my one piece of advice, is to think about exit velocity. It's not the end all be all, but look, if you're a dentist or a lawyer or, a teacher, whatever you do, if you like that and you're not necessarily trying to escape everything you do day to day, I think leveraging whatever you're doing now into your side project is incredibly beneficial. Because look, at the end of the day, this is just a classic, hilarious, it's a cliche at this point in the Valley, but startups are hard and most startups fail. And, in all likelihood, whatever you're planning is going to fail. That's math. That's just how math works. So anything you can do to increase your likelihood of success is valuable. And one of those things is exit velocity. So it's just compounding any of the advantages you have now and what you're currently doing, and then leveraging those into your side project.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think it's, something else in the startup world is competitive unfair advantage, something like this, or, some kind of unique selling. USP is a very common one I learned in school, but I think you have to have something that you're really good at. And then also Dan says is, 1,000-day rule, I think something else he's talked about. It takes 3-4 years for you to actually have a skill that's valuable or different enough than the general population that's worth somebody else paying for. So sure, if you're working in your 9-to-5, building up a skill, and take that and leverage as much as you can when you're a scrapping young hustler that's willing to try to make $1 out of 15 cents. You just got to leverage every advantage you possibly have. So thanks so much, Tommy. This has been amazing. And of course, we'll link up to the website, ClickMinded.com, where you also have the blog post we are referencing to called Burning the Boats. What are some other ways people could reach out or connect, or is this the best place?
Yeah, well, you can find us at ClickMinded.com. On Twitter, I'm at Tommy Griffith. And we actually have a bunch of free SEO checklists and SEO strategy guides and digital marketing strategy guides for you, Mike, if that's cool. If we could throw those in the show notes,
sure.
that would be
Send them
great.
over. We'll add them up. We'll add them up, man. SEO is all about backlinks. We know. We didn't get into much technical, but sure, man. You got your backlinks for sure, man. It's been great. I think it's a very valuable show, and thanks for your time. And luckily, we had pretty stable internet. No power outages. No drop calls. It's been pretty lucky here. Thanks, Tommy.
Yeah, Mike. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it.
Are you working on your SEO game? Tommy complimented me on this content machine here at Global from Asia, and we've separated out or taken some of our team and our resources and created contentinvestments.com. It's a pretty extensive services and packages. I had a great call with a client, Bob Simpson. Thanks for that, Bob. We can help you with blog posts. We can help you with podcast creation, listing creation, photo, video, all kinds of amazing stuff. So if you're impressed by our content here, our team, it's just me on this microphone now. I have amazing people that help us so much, and we've extended that to you as listeners or people that want this service. www.contentinvestments.com. Thank you so much. All right, I said I would throw in some of my tragedies. Tommy's a really charismatic. He's a great guy. He's great on webinars. I got to learn from him, to be honest. But we had some fun stories where he's talking about being an ISIS victim doing a webinar in Bali. I mean, I've had horrible webinar experiences where I've had bad internet in China and other times. But I'm not going to talk about that now. I'm going to talk about some of the other crazy, stupid things that maybe I've talked about here. I usually put it on mikesblog.com. And I'm not trying to offend China, but of course there's a lot of fun stuff you can talk about living in China, or living outside of your home country, living in another culture, living outside of your element, talking about comfort zones. I hope some of you realize I had an amazing comfort zone. I worked on Wall Street. I worked at Deutsche Bank. I mean, honestly, I turned down Goldman Sachs. I picked Deutsche Bank over Goldman. That's a whole story in itself, but I got to go to London for training and stayed in New York City almost 5 years. But it was pretty comfortable. 2 weeks, every 2 weeks, get that money hit in your bank account. Decent. They definitely pay pretty well over there. And, I leveraged all that I could into my own Amazon, or no Amazon then, even e-commerce, eBay, and websites, and learning SEO. But enough of that. But when I came out to China, there were some smaller stupid things. I remember I tried to order food by myself, and I had the phone number, and here, the story actually, I feel like it was, my doorbell rang when I was just in China at the end of 2007. Melissa was my assistant. She's still my good friend, and I didn't know what to do, but my doorbell rang, and they had some fast food delivery, and I didn't know how to even order fast food, and they gave me the bag and asked me for like 10 RMB or 8 RMB, and I gave it to them because I just didn't know how to get rid of them, and I just got somebody else's fast food. It was like, it's like $1. It was like $1 at the time. I think seriously it was like 7 or 8 RMB, and it was a huge fish. Seriously, it was like a fish inside of a styrofoam bowl in a soup. It was like some kind of fish soup. That was one small story. I usually tell these over dinner tables with some people that want to hear these stories. So the always the fun stories is getting not fun, but entertaining is getting robbed. Nobody likes getting robbed. I was investing in decent bikes. I mean, I would bike, on weekends for fun in Shenzhen, and so I bought, about $200 US cost mountain bike, because I could have gotten a street bike, but wanted to get a nicer one. I got convinced by a couple of friends. And you couldn't really leave it outside because it would get stolen. Nowadays, there's cameras everywhere, and there's the police state. But I think before it wasn't like that. So I would always bring my bike into the restaurant, or bring it into the business, or bring it into the company. I'd carry it upstairs sometimes because I just didn't trust putting it in that bike lock outside. So one time, I just couldn't convince the stupid restaurant to let me take my mountain bike, into the restaurant and put it next to my table. I mean, I did it so many times, and my Chinese wasn't so good anyway, but it was always like, I don't know what you're saying, I can't speak Chinese, and just even if I could understand what they're saying, I didn't know I would just act like I don't know what you're saying, and they usually just let me go. So this time they just didn't let up, and it was a business meeting I had. It was like a lunch. It was in near Shakeup Walmart, one of that garden mall. I can't remember the name. So they forced me to put it outside, and they said, "Don't worry, it's safe here. It's safe here." And it was like noon on Tuesday or Wednesday, Thursday. It was definitely a midweek kind of thing. And I'm talking to this Chinese businessman about some kind of like product manufacturing thing, something. This is like 2008, 2009. And I just said, sorry, I forget his name. And I was like, sorry, do you mind I just go check my bike? Like, seriously, I just want to check my bike. And he's kind of like chuckling and says, okay. And I go, look, do you think the bike was there? No. I don't think it was more than a half an hour and the bike was gone. I'm like so mad because this maybe the restaurant was in on the maybe it's their plan was to rob my bike, but I freaked out. You know, I go back and I asked the Chinese businessman that was in my meeting to help me talk to them. And of course, it's not their liability, it's my liability because I left the bike out there. And I said, you made me leave the bike out there. But I call the police, or I tell the guy, he's like, nobody calls the police. But I called the police, and the police came, and there was a camera pointing at that bike area. But of course, the bike, that camera was not working or not installed or some BS. So I wanted to file a police report, and they thought I was crazy. They're like, filing a police report? But I went in the police truck with the guy to the police station, and it was in Shakeup, in Shenzhen, and they could even speak some English. And they said, you know, they're just trying to get the description of the bike, and then I said, so do you have like a loaner bike you could lend me that you've claimed? I don't know. Can't say I've done this in the U.S., but I swear there's like a room at a police station in America where they've reclaimed stolen goods and they're trying to find the person it belongs to. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, you know, any of the stolen bikes that you've found? And they're just looking at me like blank. And I'm like, so basically you never find stolen bikes. And he said, so wait, I'm a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm trying to figure out good business opportunities always. So wait, if I steal bikes or I have other people steal bikes, and then maybe I don't steal it myself, but I tell other people to steal bikes, and I give them half of what I can sell it for, and I only have to pay them when I sell it, and then if I get in any trouble, I can just use some of my profits to pay people off, and then my Chinese friend's like, shut up. I'm like, but this is seriously what's happening. Like, probably exactly what's happening. But I got the police report. It's on my personal blog. I documented this like a weirdo. And I said, I will call you. Or they're like, no, you don't call us. If we have any updates on this case, we call you. So poor Amy on my team at the time, I asked her like a week later, can you call the police and ask them an update? Man, you could hear them yelling to her on the phone when she called. Like, this is like a traditional like office landline phone. And they're like, in Chinese, like, we said don't call us, we call you when we have an update. And then like a week or two later, again, I asked her, and she was like begging me, please, Mike, I don't want to call. Please, I don't want to call. I'm like, call. They were so furious. They're just like so furious because basically they're not gonna find the stolen bike. So I lost the bike. It's a bummer. Maybe I'll link it up on the show notes, but it was a really old blog post. I don't know. I could go for one more. If you're still with me, you could just cancel if you don't want to hear the second story. So the second story is my laptop got stolen. This is a big bummer. My laptop got stolen at a restaurant. I got invited by a friend. She won tickets to a restaurant for an opening of a restaurant, and it was a head table, and the radio show host that she listened to was there, and the owner or manager of the restaurant was there. It was like a massive table, like 15 people, and I took my laptop, and it was a new HP, and it came in an HP bag, and I brought it with me. Stupidly, after my work, I left my office, and I went there, and we had dinner and everything, and then we get up and everybody's all happy, and then my laptop's gone. It was in an HP laptop bag, so don't use those laptop bags. They gave it to me for free, but don't. It's basically a big sign saying "steal me." But this is 2009, I think, and I freaked out again. I'm like, my laptop. It was actually only like a month old, maybe not even, and they're just like, oh, maybe you left it in the office. I'm like, no, I took it for sure. I definitely took it. And then they said, oh, there's a camera, and there was another camera. Broken again. These things, at least then, I think now they're real, but I think then they were just, half of them were not really there, just hopefully scaring people to not steal or do something bad. But I was like, this is BS, and the manager's all embarrassed. The radio show host is all concerned. The girl that was with me was like nervous, and I said, call the police. People, at least then, never call the police. And now, and this story is where I learned not to call the police. So the police came. I'll try to shorten this up, but basically I saw some pretty crazy stuff of people getting thrown pretty roughly around inside the police station, and I went into like some interrogation room or reporting room, and felt like it was in a Hellraiser movie where there's people in all these rooms like yelling and screaming and being tortured. Felt like that. But sitting down, and the first part of the form of the police report is about you. So like, where do you live? Are you registered police? What do you do? What's your visa? I'm like, man, it was grilling me. And I was like, man, I just got my laptop stolen. But he just says, I got to fill this report out. So you got to tell me all of this information before I can get to your report. And it was kind of scary. I was like, hopefully I'm not going to get in trouble for something with one of these questions. But basically got past all the questions, fill out the report. We're leaving. And the manager was with me, actually, and the girl. So he felt all relieved. He's like, okay, great, this is over. And we're in the parking lot, and he's like, oh, don't worry, we're going to find it, we'll let you know. And he's kind of like, he had this sigh of relief and this kind of like smirk. And I didn't speak much Chinese still, and I could tell he was kind of like just like relieved. So I just said to the girl, I said, just tell him pay me 8,000 RMB, which is about, at the time, I guess like 1,200 US. I said, just give me that money, and don't worry about it. No problem. And then she's like, you want me to tell him that? I'm like, yeah, tell him that. So she tells him in Chinese, and you can see his like relieved smirk turns into like an angry face. Like, I wish I could have recorded that. I didn't do videos then. I was like, we're in the parking lot of a police station, and it just went, that smile went to like frown within like 4 or 5 words. And then he's like, starts arguing with her, saying, it's his fault. He has to be careful of his own belongings. It's not our responsibility for watching our customers' goods. And I said, you didn't put a condom on my chair. I call it like a chair condom. You ever see that in a restaurant where they put this like thing on the back of your chair? It's like a big cloth that goes and covers your jacket or your bag. I said, you didn't put that on my chair. And, and then basically still didn't really care. And I had some other reasons. He didn't really care. I had to kind of give him a chance. I said, well, I love blogging. I share online. I know a lot of the English newspapers. Your restaurant just opened. How about I read a little report about what happened and my laptop getting stolen there, and then that's what got his attention. So he says, okay. How about I give you half the money? I'll give you 4,000. You sign a paper that's promises you don't talk about this. I guess now, well, that was 10 years ago. So anyway, I don't say the name of the restaurant anyways. It was in Nanshan, near the Nanshan Saiga. But basically, we went back to his restaurant. He gave me an envelope of 4,000. I counted it, and he gave me some kind of paper he hand wrote in Chinese, and I just signed the bottom, just gonna shut my mouth. But that was only the way they got that to work. And then I had Chinese friends mad at me, like, you shouldn't have gotten any money. If Chinese, they would never get Chinese because you're a foreigner. They give you your money back, blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't have got anything. I had people like saying they were like angry at me that I got any kind of money because I'm white or I'm a foreigner. No, I don't know. Whatever. I'll take it. But anyway, that's a couple of my stories. But that's what's going to happen. Like Tommy has some problems, But hopefully you like the adventure, and hopefully you keep an open mind and you learn and get out of your comfort zone, like we said. So thanks, Tommy, for coming on the show. If you're still listening to this blah, blah, blah series, this is a little bit longer than the others, but I snuck in 2 stories. I think those are some of my more favorite ones I like to share. So maybe now I can just tell people to listen to the podcast. This episode, 260. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
To get more info about running an international business, please visit our website at www.globalfromasia.com. That's www.globalfromasia.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to our iTunes feed. Thanks for tuning in.